The average house in Sandbanks, Britain's priciest seaside spot, now costs £965,000. 200 miles further north, whole seaside towns in Scotland are selling houses for under £120,000. Sea view included, well within reach of an ordinary pension. According to Lloyds Bank's 2025 review, 9 of Britain's 10 cheapest coastal towns are Scottish. And almost none of them get talked about. 10 of them are counted down today, each one real and buyable right now, each one carrying exactly one honest catch before we move on. The very last entry is the single cheapest coastal town in the whole of Britain, still running a hospital, a museum, and a cinema built in 1913. Real towns, real numbers, real catches. Starting at number 10, Britain's coastline has split into 2 completely different markets, and most people only ever hear about one of them. On the south coast of England, Sandbanks now averages that same £965,000 a house, and nearby spots like Alderburgh and Lymington sit well over £600,000 each. Those are the towns that make the property pages, the ones estate agents photograph at golden hour, over and over, until you'd swear that was the only coastline Britain had. Scotland tells a completely different story, and the numbers back it up hard. Lloyds Bank's 2025 Coastal Homes Review, built on Land Registry and Registers of Scotland data, found that 9 of Britain's 10 cheapest seaside towns sit north of the border. That is not one outlier town dragging the average down on its own. It's a whole cluster of them, mostly on the west coast, mostly ignored by the same magazines that keep photographing Sandbanks. It would be easy to assume Scotland's whole coast is cheap, but that isn't true, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. Scotland's coastal towns average around £325,000, well above the national Scottish average of somewhere between £193,000 and £237,000. On the east coast, in Fife and East Lothian, towns like Ely and Earlsferry, Gullane, Longnidree and North Berwick often sell for above £450,000. Longnidree alone has climbed 39% in price since 2019. So this list isn't move to Scotland and save a fortune. It's far more specific than that. It's 10 named towns, mostly on the west coast and the quieter stretches of the map, where the maths actually works for someone living on a pension. Every single one of them earns its place with a real number rather than a nice adjective. Every one of them also gets exactly one honest catch. Because a house this cheap by the sea never comes with 0 trade-offs attached to it. Let's get into it, starting with the least hidden name on this list, the one closest to what you'd actually expect from an ordinary Scottish town. Number 10 is Irvine on the North Ayrshire coast, and it's the biggest town on this entire list by a wide margin. Home to around 33,000 people, it sits in a whole different category from most of the towns still to come. This is a proper town. It has a harbour, a beach and a full high street, not a village dressed up for a postcard. Irvine also has the best day-to-day transport link of the towns near the bottom of this list. ScotRail runs direct trains from Irvine straight into Glasgow Central, and the short hop down the coast to Saltcoats, our next stop, takes about 33 minutes. For a retiree who still wants the option of a city day out without owning a car, that matters more than scenery alone, and it's worth more than people give it credit for. Here's the honest catch, and it's a simple one. Irvine's size is exactly what keeps it off every list of quiet little coastal escapes. And it means you're not getting the empty beach feeling some of the smaller towns further down this list can offer. What you get instead is full-size shops, a working hospital nearby, and none of the ferry timetables that several towns further down this list will force you to live around. If you want a genuine Scottish coastal town that still feels like a normal town rather than a retreat, Irvine earns its spot, honestly. If you want smaller and quieter, stay with us, because the next stop is a short train ride away and a very different kind of place. Number 9 is Saltcoats, just down the same rail line from Irvine, and noticeably smaller and quieter. Around 12,250 people call it home, according to recent estimates, in a proper harbour town rather than a resort built purely for tourists. The numbers here are worth sitting with for a moment. The average sold price in Saltcoats works out to about £139,000, though the actual range runs from as little as £16,000 right up to £330,000. That spread alone tells you the housing stock varies enormously from street to street. ScotRail also runs direct trains to Glasgow Central from Saltcoats, taking around 46 minutes, with services running up to twice an hour. That commute time is exactly why Saltcoats isn't one of the truly rock-bottom towns on this list. It sits close enough to Glasgow to draw commuters and second-home buyers, and that pulls the price above towns that are much harder to reach. The honest catch is the range itself. With prices swinging from £16,000 to over £300,000 inside one small town, you can't assume every property here is a bargain, and you need to shop street by street rather than trusting the average number. Saltcoats works best for someone who wants a real seaside town with a fast way back into Glasgow, not total isolation. From here, we're leaving the Ayrshire coast completely and heading southeast, almost to the English border, for a very different kind of harbour town. Number 8 is Eyemouth, a working fishing harbour in Berwickshire, tucked into the far southeast corner of Scotland. About 8 miles from Berwick upon Tweed and the English border itself. Around 3,520 people live here based on national records of Scotland's estimates. In a town built almost entirely around its harbour, the average sold price in Eyemouth comes out to roughly £177,900. The lower end of the market starts closer to £173,000, climbing into the several hundred thousands for the bigger harbourside homes. That's meaningfully cheaper than the towns clustered around Edinburgh and Fife, while still putting you within easy reach of England by both road and rail. Eyemouth has also seen real investment recently, with both public and private money going into redeveloping the harbour and the town centre. That money is modernising facilities for the fishing fleet and giving the local tourism trade a boost at the same time. This is not a town frozen in time, waiting to be discovered. It's a working harbour that's actively being reinvested in right now. Here's the honest catch. A working fishing harbour means the weather and the industry are part of daily life, not just a nice view from your window. And living this close to England means you lose some of the deep highlands feeling that Scottish beach town might have put in your head if what you pictured was rugged glens and single-track roads. Eyemouth will surprise you with how close it actually sits to the ordinary borders countryside instead. From the English border, we're heading northeast along the coast, to a town where the price finally climbs, and so does the quality of life that comes with it. Number 7 is Cullen on the Moray coast, and this is the first town on this list that actually breaks the everything here is dirt cheap pattern. Around 1,500 people live here now, though the 2022 census recorded 1,239, with a noticeably older age profile than the Scottish average. The average sold price in Cullen is about £251,389, with most properties selling somewhere between £215,000 and £325,000. That's more than double what you'll pay in Campbeltown, which we're building toward at number 1. And it needs saying plainly instead of glossed over. What that extra money buys is visible the moment you arrive. Cullen has its own golf club along with the Cullen Links course, an 18-hole layout designed by old Tom Morris back in 1870. It's cut into the cliffs above the beach with the first 9 holes running along the cliff top before dropping down to sea level. A disused Victorian railway viaduct now forms part of a popular coastal walk linking Cullen Bay and the neighbouring village of Portnocky. The honest catch here is twofold. This simply isn't a bargain by this list's standards, and its older skewing population is a real signal about the kind of services and pace of life to expect long-term. Not a criticism, just something worth knowing before you commit to it. From a town that trades cheapness for quality of life, we're heading west to a different kind of hub entirely. One built around getting people to the islands rather than keeping them on the mainland. Number 6 is Oban in Argyll, and this is the busiest ferry port in the whole of Scotland measured by passenger numbers. 3 separate CalMac piers sit within 400 metres of each other here, sending ferries out to Mull, Iona, Colonsay, Barra, Tiree and Col. House prices in the town itself average around £223,000. About 7% above the wider Argyll and Bute, average of £177,000 recorded in February 2026. Oban also has a direct ScotRail service into Glasgow Queen Street, with onward connections to Edinburgh and Inverness. And the town is served by its own hospital, Lawn and Islands Hospital. Put plainly, Oban has the best transport and healthcare combination of any town on this list so far. A working train station, a working hospital, and 6 island ferry routes leaving from the same stretch of harbour. That combination is exactly why it will never be the cheapest option here. You should also know that a widely shared claim about Oban scoring nearly 10 out of 10 on a bank's affordability index has been circulating online. It couldn't be verified against any original source, so we're leaving it out rather than repeating a number nobody can actually stand behind. The honest catch is straightforward. A genuine transport and tourism hub pulls in summer crowds and higher demand than the sleepier towns on this list. And that demand shows up in the price. If what you want is maximum connection to the rest of Scotland, Oban delivers it. If you want maximum quiet, you'll find that further down this list instead. From the best connected town on this list, we're heading to the most remote one. Before we pause for a moment and count down the final 5. Number 5 is Arisaig in the Lochaber Highlands. And this might be the single most beautiful entry on this whole list. It sits along the silver sands of Morar, and Camasdarach Beach in particular gives you white sand and turquoise water. The jagged outline of the Quillins on Skye, the peaks of Rum, and the cliffs of Eigg all sit on the horizon at once. Only around 300 people live in Arisaig itself. Arisaig railway station sits on the West Highland line and is the westernmost railway station in the whole of Britain. Around 3 to 4 ScotRail services a day connect Fort William and Mallig, a journey that takes about 90 minutes end to end. House prices here need an honest caveat rather than a clean single number, because sources flatly disagree with each other. Some data puts the average around £227,700, while other figures push closer to £285,000. At least one higher figure looks skewed by a small handful of expensive sales, rather than reflecting the real everyday market. With a village this small and only a handful of transactions a year, that kind of disagreement is exactly what you'd expect from a market this thin. The honest catch follows directly from that same small number. 300 people means a tiny and unpredictable housing market. Real winter isolation once the tourists leave, and total dependence on one rail line and one road for reaching anywhere bigger. This is the most scenic trade-off on the list so far. And it's a serious one, not a small print footnote. We still haven't reached the cheapest coastal town in the whole of Britain. That entry is still coming, save for the very end. And the next 5 towns on this list are where the real bargains start. If you've made it this far, this channel exists for exactly this kind of video. Real towns, real numbers, and one honest catch every single time. No sugarcoating. Hit subscribe if that's what you came here for. Now, the final 4, starting with the first of 3 island towns you can only reach by ferry. Number 4 is Port Bannatyne on the Isle of Bute, a quieter neighbour sitting just along the coast from the island's main town. Around 1,090 people call Port Bannatyne home, and this is where the ferry-dependent cluster of this list properly begins. 4 towns in a row that all rely on the same small handful of Clyde crossings. Lloydsbank's 2025 review put the average house price here at £115,421. More recent sold price data from Rightmove, covering the 12 months to May 2026, puts it slightly lower at around £110,455. Either figure buys a genuine waterfront home facing the Firth of Clyde. Not a shed with a view of it. Getting here means the Wemyss Bay ferry, the same crossing that serves Rothesay, just along the coast, plus a second, less frequent Calmac service running from Rubadach across to the Cowal Peninsula. Both routes work well enough in good weather, and both routes are the only way in or out, with no alternative road available. Here's the honest catch, stated plainly rather than softened. Every single errand becomes a ferry timetable rather than a road. Your GP visit, your supermarket run, your trip to see family, all of it now runs on a boat schedule instead of your own. That's a different way to live entirely, and it needs to be understood before it gets romanticised into something lighter than it is. Port Bannatyne is the quieter half of a two-town island, and the honest comparison sits right next door. From here, we're moving a few minutes up the same coast road to Bute's main town, the one with the fuller high street. Number 3 is Rothesay, the Isle of Bute's principal town, and the natural comparison point for Port Bannatyne, which we just covered. Around 4,310 people live here, more than 4 times Port Bannatyne's population. And that difference shows up immediately in the shops, the services, and the Victorian seafront running along the harbour. The average house price sits at £111,764, close to Port Bannatyne's figure, and the same Calmac ferry connects Rothesay to Wemyss Bay on the mainland, running daily and taking about 35 minutes each way. Here's the direct comparison worth making. Port Bannatyne and Rothesay share almost the same price and the exact same ferry dependence, but Rothesay gives you a noticeably fuller high street and a bigger year-round population to support it, which matters if you want more than a handful of shops within walking distance. That single difference, town size rather than price, matters more on this list than the number on the price tag, because 2 towns costing nearly the same can feel completely different to actually live in day to day. The honest catch is still the ferry, and it deserves one extra layer of honesty here. A 35-minute crossing sounds trivial until a winter storm rolls in, and Clyde ferries do get cancelled when that happens, which means 35 minutes to the mainland can occasionally become not today, try tomorrow. That's real information for anyone planning regular hospital appointments or family visits around this crossing. Rothesay proves that on this list, the specific town matters more than the region it sits in. From Bute, we're leaving for a whole different island, reach from a different mainland port altogether, and famous for something you can do to it in under an hour on a bike. Number 2 is Millport, the only town on the Isle of Great Cumbrae, and it's reached from Largs rather than Wemyss Bay. A completely different mainland crossing from the last 2 entries. The island is small enough that a full lap by bike takes under an hour. Flat road the whole way round. Houses here average £114,008. The island's population was 1,376 at the 2011 census, down from 1,434 a decade earlier. Millport itself is now estimated at around 1,170 people. That population figure is worth pausing on, because it's the first hard measured decline on this entire list. Every other catch so far has been about distance or ferry timetables. This one is about a trend, an island that's been getting smaller, census after census. Not a guess or an impression, but an actual counted fact sitting in the record. The ferry itself adds a wrinkle too. The crossing runs from Largs to Cumbrae Slip, but that slip sits several miles from Millport itself, so foot passengers need a connecting bus on top of the crossing just to reach the town. Anyone without a car is looking at 2 separate legs of travel before they even arrive at their own front door. The honest catch then is really two catches stacked together. A shrinking population tends to mean shrinking local services over time. GPs, shops and public transport all under more pressure as the number of people using them keeps falling. And the ferry slip's distance from town adds friction that towns like Rothesay, reached directly at its own pier, simply don't have. Millport still earns its place high on this list for its price and its setting, but it deserves to be chosen with open eyes about where the population trend is heading. And now we've reached the entry this entire video was built around. The single cheapest coastal town in the whole of Britain. Number 1 is Campbeltown, on the Kintyre Peninsula in Argyll. And according to Lloyds Bank's 2025 Coastal Homes Review, it's the single cheapest coastal town anywhere in Britain. The average house price here is £103,078, down 11% on the year before. That's more than £860,000 cheaper than Sandbanks. The town we opened this whole video with, Campbeltown, was once known as the whiskey capital of the world, and the coastline backs that history up, with clear views out to Islay, Jura and Arran. The town itself counts 4,490 people, according to the 2021 count. Getting here is the real story behind that price. Campbeltown sits about 60 miles from Glasgow as the crow flies, but the actual road distance runs to 135 miles, winding around lochs and mountains rather than cutting straight across. Scottish CityLink's bus 926 links Campbeltown to Glasgow's Buchanan Street 4 to 5 times a day, taking around 4 hours each way, and connects on to various island ferries from there. None of that distance means Campbeltown lacks for services, and this is exactly the point of putting it at number 1. The town has a working hospital served by local buses, a museum of local history housed in a late Victorian building, and a heritage centre. It also has the Campbeltown Picture House, Scotland's oldest working cinema, built in 1913 in an Art Nouveau style that still draws people in on its own merits. Traditional hotels like the Royal and the Ardshiel, the latter known for its whiskey selection, keep a working hospitality trade going in the town too. Not a museum piece of one. Here's the honest catch, and it's the same catch that's run through most of this list, just at its most extreme. West Coast Motors, who run the local buses around the peninsula, don't operate on Sundays or in the late evening, which is a real limit on anyone without their own car. And that 11% price drop over the past year cuts both ways. It's a genuine bargain today, but it's also a sign that Campbeltown's local economy is still finding its feet, rather than standing on completely solid ground. Put those two facts together and you get the honest version of this whole list in one town. Full services, real heritage, real scenery, at a price that wouldn't buy you a garage in parts of London, provided you accept the 4-hour bus ride and the timetable that comes with it. That's Campbeltown. And that's the trade-off sitting underneath every single cheap seaside town story in Britain right now. Every one of these 10 towns is real, buyable, and sitting on the coast right now for a fraction of what Sandbanks costs. Tell us in the comments which one you'd actually pack a van for, and which one surprised you the most. £103,078 for a house by the sea. Read that again.